Hey everybody, Plushie here. With the upcoming Fairy Night Cup event, I feel like it is only natural that we talk a little bit about the Fairy Knights. Now, we don't know if the Fairy Knights are going to get a banner during the event, but considering that the event is literally named Fairy Night Cup, and also the event is sort of taking up the time space that they were supposed to be doing Road to 6, I think it is a pretty big possibility that they at least include the 4-star Fairy Knights along with the brand new SSR. So today, let's start with one of my favorite Fairy Knights, Baobhan Sith. So let's take a look at her skills. Her first skill is a 3-turn 40% quick up, a 1-turn invul to self, a 1-time party-wide evade, meaning that it wouldn't deactivate until they get hit, and a small demerit of a 500 HP drain to her allies. This is a pretty decent skill. It's very reminiscent of other previous archers such as base Tristan as well as David with that permanent 1-time AoE evade. It is not going to be your prime defensive skill on the team, however it's very useful for blocking MPs or just generally throwing out to reduce damage here and there. Baobhan Sith, however, also has a self 1-turn invul, which is very important in a more solo context or if you only care about her survival. The 1-turn invul also protects the 1-time evade that is also casted on her from being removed in the first turn, so it guarantees it to block another hit on the following turn. If you're soloing with her, you can actually time it like 1 turn before the MP to save some cooldown. So it is actually a pretty powerful skill. On top of all of that, it also has a 40% 3-turn quick up. Usually you only get 1 turn of mana burst, while this is a lower number than the 50% mana burst. It is a whopping 3 turns, so it is a really impressive damage buff. Overall, really powerful skill. Her second skill is a 30 MP battery with an AoE, MP, and skill seal for a single turn. Now 30 MP batteries are never bad. They could get pretty boring, but you have to admit they are really useful in both farming and boss killing. The AoE, MP, and skill seal are really important when enemies like to spam weird gimmick skills such as really annoying debuffs or really powerful buffs to themselves. This can really disrupt some specific nodes if you want to. However, do be careful though, when the enemy is skill sealed, they will attack with all of their actions, so you might take more damage. But overall, really good utility skill as well as generalist skill for the battery. And finally, her third skill is a 3000 HP drain, meaning that it reduces the enemy's HP by 3000 as well as heals herself by 3000, and it drains the enemy's MP gauge by 1, and it also is a 30 MP battery. Now this is also a really solid skill. The 3000 heal is pretty okay. It's not super insane, but it's pretty substantial, especially if you use it with a heal command code. The 30 MP battery, again, making her having 60 MP battery in total, is really helpful in farming situations. And the MP drain is just a cherry on top that can save you in a pinch if your cooldown is like 1 turn off, or as just in general as a slowdown tool for the enemy's MP turn. Baobhan Sith also has really good passives. She has Magic Resistance EX, which increases her debuff resistance by 25%. It is actually pretty high of a number for a passive skill, and you can actually kind of semi-reliably block off some minor debuffs with this skill. She also has Riding A, which is a permanent 10% quick up. Combined with her first skill, when it's active, it does actually matches the 50% quick up, which is the mana burst number, for a whopping 3 turns. So this is a pretty strong passive because 10% is really high for a permanent card color buff. And she also has a permanent 10% buff for her arts card, which helps with her arts refund. Because her quick refund really isn't the best on her face card, admittedly, so this also helps quite a bit. Baobhan Sith's MP Fetch Fail Not is a sure hit single target quick MP that casts 1000 curse for 5 turns on the enemy. Its overcharge effect is casting 5 turns of Evil Curse on the enemy that scales from 200% to 400%. Now, having sure hit is pretty good. It does bypass evade skills, but in more recent high difficulty contexts, they usually just straight up use invul. So the situation where you would actually run into some major gimmick that involves evade is not that high. However, it is still pretty okay. It's better than nothing. Her other effect is very curse team centric. If you're not using her in specifically a curse team, it's not going to feel that much. Unless you're spamming her MP a lot, then even if you only use her as the curse unit in your team, you might unintentionally stack the curse damage to pretty high because it does last 5 turns, but overall it's not that major of an effect. Now, Baobhan Sith compared to her other 4-star peer, Barghest, might seem a little bit underwhelming at first, with Barghest being one of the strongest solo units in the game right now, and also having a unique gimmick where she can heal, eat buffs, and debuff the enemy at the same time whenever she attacks. Baobhan Sith has a really sort of vanilla skill set compared to her. However, she has these vanilla effects in very generous numbers, so she's actually a very, very solid single target archer. Compared to base Tristan, she sacrifices some team utility such as AoE debuff removal as well as enemy single target buff removal for better self-sustain, such as the 1-turn invul on her evade, or the better damage boost with the 40% quick up on her skill 1 as well. She also has a bigger battery. In fact, she has 2 batteries that combine to be more battery than Tristan's singular one. This leads to Baobhan Sith's first really good use case, which is farming in 90+ and 90++ nodes. As you can see here in the video, she is farming the most recent 90++ node from this year's Halloween event. Having 2 30 MP batteries is a lot better than having one 60 MP battery because it's very flexible in terms of the timing when you want to use these batteries. Usually this leads to Baobhan Sith being able to MP multiple times in a single farming node despite not having like any refund on her MP itself. The second most obvious place to put Baobhan Sith is in a curse team. Her curse numbers are really high. It's the exact same as Salome's curse and evil curse numbers, and she has a couple of advantages over her, such as way better survivability because of her rarity, class, and her first skill being a way better survival skill than anything Salome can even dream to do. And she also has batteries. The skill seal battery is pretty useful, not just because of the 30 MP battery, but sometimes the enemy has cleanse skills and that can stop the enemies from actually using them. It did happen recently on the Imaginary Scramble main interlude for one of my runs. And having 60 MP battery means that you can dedicate your CE to overcharge boosting, for example, instead of bringing like a K-scope, so you can further increase that curse damage. Or on the flip side, you can still bring a K-scope and you can MP multiple times with Baobhan Sith instead of just the one time with Salome. So she's definitely a mainstay in these kinds of teams. I know these teams are pretty niche, but if you really enjoy this kind of playstyle, she'd be a valuable asset as well. And finally, I think Baobhan Sith is actually a pretty decent solo unit. Once again, when you put her beside Barghest, she's definitely not going to seem like a good solo unit. However, her first skill actually goes a long way in terms of reducing damage in a run, and her third skill is actually a pretty substantial heal if you pair it up with a heal up effect. So as you can see here, she can actually solo Prison Tower, which is a high pressure gauntlet boss quest that contains lancers as well as rulers where she deals half damage to them. But she can still prevail with her first skill of heavily reducing damage and, more importantly, blocking very critical damage turns such as an MP turn or a crit turn, and her third skill being a pretty decent heal. So overall, I think Baobhan Sith cannot not just perform in like a farming team or a curse team, she can also be a pretty good standalone archer if you need one. However, Baobhan Sith does have her weaknesses. I do think of all the single target archers, she doesn't do that amazing of a damage, considering she doesn't have an upgraded MP, nor does she have a lot of different ways to buff her damage. She does have the basically quick mana burst for 3 turns, but that is it. And when you use her with double Scotty or even triple Scotty in today's landscape, the quick up is actually heavily diluted, so it would not get the full 50% effect most of the time. So I really hope Baobhan Sith gets a MP upgrade if she is a servant that appears in the new event, because that is the biggest problem that I face whenever I try to use her in CQ min turns and stuff. And considering mine is level 100 2k fold, I think she can definitely use some help in the damage department. So overall, Baobhan Sith is a pretty vanilla servant. However, she is the pinnacle of a vanilla servant, because all of these quote-unquote simple effects are toned up in terms of their damage, their value, and how many of it she gets. So she is actually a very competent servant that you would not regret leveling up. She can be used in very weird numbered farming nodes, as well as in some niche curse teams, and more importantly, as a single target archer that can really easily use her MP again and again because of her big amounts of battery. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this relatively simple review video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.